Well, it's probably a thought that we have all had at some stage in our jobs. Deciding to resign and to leave a job is a very important decision. Now, sometimes it can feel like it's the natural thing to do, that logical step to progress your career, but sometimes you may be torn about whether to go. Part of you loves the job. Part of you probably hates it as well, and you've got this very important decision to make, and it just impacts so much in your life. And Harold Hillman is with us again this afternoon. How are you, Harold?
I'm good, Mike. Thank you.
This is so weird because every time you come in, I've got a story that can relate to what we're talking about today. 5 things to consider before you resign. And I've done this. I resigned from the Edge years ago. Thought I was going to go on and do something else. But as the time got closer to actually leaving, all these things started running through my head. Security, stability, my workmates, my work quality life. I thought, I don't want to walk away from this job. Pulled the pin. Luckily, the boss said, okay, cool, sweet, you can stay. Obviously I needed you to come in and talk to me about the 5 things I needed to consider before I handed in my notice.
Your description is perfect in terms of what goes on. I often talk about an inner coach and an inner critic that resides in your head, based on just your life's experiences and whether or not you tend to back yourself or whether or not you tend to start finding reasons why you shouldn't have done that.
It's so scary, though, isn't it, when you decide to resign, because the unknown can sometimes freak you out.
That's
Deep
right.
down that it could be a turning point in your life, but you
That's
don't
right.
want to rock that boat too much.
That's right.
So you just don't know what to do.
Yeah, because you are purposefully pulling the pin and you're walking into, particularly if you are resigning and you don't have a position to step into immediately. So you're walking into a fog, into a haze. You really have to be purposeful when you do that. And my guess is it would probably have been a pretty important reason that got you there.
Well, speaking of reasons, what are some of the reasons people resign from a job?
Well, the few of the real common ones are boredom.
Okay.
So people who, they've outgrown the challenge in a certain role, just based on years in a role, they're doing the same thing. Boredom is one of the top 5 stressors in life.
Wow.
And, a lot of people at work just aren't stretched. And so if the company can't provide an opportunity to grow, people sometimes will leave for that. A big factor is a poor relationship with the manager.
Okay, yeah, true.
There's that old adage, Mike, that people don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses.
True. True
a lot of us could relate to that. And so that's a big one as well. Poor relationship with the team, somebody who's just not fitting in for whatever reason. They just cannot make it work, so that there's a lot of stress associated with it.
And that would be quite common, I would imagine, because, if you're in a workplace for a long time, there are team members that come and go. Every now and again, you would strike somebody, particularly if they're upper management, that you don't get on with, a personality clash. That's when you start going, it's time for me to move on.
That's right.
That's right. This place, time for me to go.
That's right.
Can't be bothered. Old dickhead running the place.
No, if that every now and then that situation will come upon us where we really do have a dickhead running the place. But if we've gotten into a pattern where we've left the last 3 jobs because of a person that we couldn't get along with, that starts to sort of point inward, and you might want to do some. So,
okay.
That's right. But so we're allowed one jerk boss.
But leaving a job, I guess, to further your career is not a bad thing to do.
No, it is good. I mean, the other reason is that you're on a career path, and that you do want to broaden your experience, that it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And that, very often, even if there are opportunities to grow within the current company, you may want to try out a different sector. You may even want to travel abroad, Australia, Europe, the States, just to get, more rich, diverse experience.
I never did an OE. I went straight from broadcasting school to full-time employment. And it wasn't until last year, and I'm 43 now, it wasn't until last year that I went to Europe, and I had 5 weeks in Europe with the other half. You do come back feeling a bit more worldly. You put things into perspective a little. You find out what matters to you. So not a bad thing to do either, is it?
That was my motivation for leaving Prudential in 2003. I was in New York working for an iconic brand, and Fonterra came along. And this was an incredible opportunity. I had never worked outside the States.
Right.
I'd worked for global companies, but I didn't consider myself global. So coming to New Zealand was a deliberate choice to resign from Prudential and expand my worldview.
You've probably never been on a big farm before either.
I had never been on a farm.
I see. So it does pay divvies. It does pay divvies
It does.
sometimes. Okay, cool. The 5 questions that people should ask themselves before resigning.
Sure thing.
People listening now going, oh, I'm pleased you're telling me this now because I'm about ready to hand him a letter. So here are the things that you should consider.
All right. Number 1, is the big picture clear in your head? So do you really, are you taking all things into consideration, or did you have an argument with a team member or your manager on Friday and now here you are? So step back and really think big picture. Number 2, is it too soon to leave? There is such a thing. You know, people aren't wed to rose the way they were 20 years ago. So, for example, in the high tech, IT sector, 1 or 2 years in a row is considered to be standard. But you don't want to create the perception that you're moving around every 6 months,
right,
or something like that.
Because an employer would pick that up, wouldn't they?
They'd pick it up and
jobs, why do you keep leaving?
Yeah, begin to make some inferences about you. The third one is, am I running from something or toward something? Because those are 2 different energy forces. And if you're running from something, have you really dug into it to the point, particularly if you like the company, you like the role? So give some thought to whether or not you're running from something and whether it may be a pattern. Or are you moving towards something that's really bigger, it's brighter, it has more energy around it, that type of thing? It's a different thing.
If you're running from something, is it good to plant the seed by saying, I'm giving you a letter of resignation, and then have the discussions about how you can fix it? Or is it best to go to the bosses and try and fix it before you get to the point where you resign?
I think so, because once you've resigned, it's hard. Once you lock into a decision,
right,
even if it's tentative, you begin to select data to reinforce it. You see what you want to see. So I would just say that if you feel that you're on a slippery slope and things are declining, get in, have a conversation soon enough. Oftentimes there's a misunderstanding that you don't find out about until the exit interview.
Yeah, right. So don't start that conversation with the letter of resignation.
That's right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And number 4?
If your problem is with another person, have you at least gone in to just try to resolve it so that you have peace of mind walking out the door on the other side of it? You've been the bigger person.
Okay, nice.
And then finally, the 5th one is, what have I learned from this? Have I learned enough? Have I sat in the role long enough to see the sort of the ups and the downs? Don't just stay in a role when it's up, but walk away when things start to wobble a bit, because that experience will be important for you. So what have I learned? Have I learned enough? Do I need to stay another 6-7 months to see the end of this project? That type of thing.
Because a lot of people, let's talk the broadcasting industry. For me, stable job for 20 years at the same radio station. Halfway through that, as you heard, I resigned, but then luckily I stayed, and things carried on to be quite amazing after that, in all honesty. But sometimes in jobs, you just have to, Harold, suck up some of the personalities that you work with, the problems that you come across, because they are hard to find in certain industries.
That's right.
Another job. That's
right. Look, I agree. For those of us who are not independently wealthy, we do need a job. We need to work. And the reality is, you put human beings in a room together, and there's always going to be some inherent tensions there. So manage your expectations and don't get to the point where you got to grow some resilience in terms of pushing through things. I think the big thing is, are you in an environment that's unreasonably stressful, where in some cases where it may feel that people are just, sort of stripping your dignity away, or those types of things, where it may not be psychologically healthy. Or if you really are bored, there's some real good reasons why you should leave. But to your point, give it some thought, know.
Yeah, cool. And, people listening now that have probably been thinking about resigning, those 5 questions you should ask yourself will definitely help point you in the right direction. And, whatever side of the coin you come out on, the best of luck is all I'm saying. Thank you, Harold, arming us with day-to-day information that'll really help us in our journey through careers. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
That is Harold Hillman, leadership coach, author, business commentator and managing director at Sigmoid Curve Consulting Group. Thank you so much, Harold. You have a great afternoon. Somebody said, can you keep this guy on as a speaker? His accent is amazing. I could listen all day. Hopefully you heard what he was saying and you weren't just hypnotised by his